every now and again I kind of think that with all of the technical stuff and geeky stuff that I'm up to up here, although this is kind of a channel about a train set, it's kind of all set and no train for a lot of the time. And I've been having a lot of problems recently, technical ones, which I've kind of gone on about quite a lot. But while that's been happening for the last 2 or 3 months, I haven't really been able to run trains, but I have, however, kind of been on the lookout for new ones, and I've picked a few up. So as the layout starts to work again and I start to be able to run trains, there are quite a few new ones around that are new to the layout. And I have a very, I don't know, specific way of, or specific approach to buying new trains, really. I'm very budget conscious. I realise things, you know, prices are going up and everything, but I do think for a hobby, what to me is, okay, it takes up a lot of time, but it is a kind of childish hobby. These things are expensive. Not just the locos, the rolling stock coaches, everything is expensive. So I do have a kind of maybe a method to buying new stuff, which probably isn't for everybody, but I'm going to kind of go through the new stuff that's arrived that I'm running now, and how I went about getting it and what my reasons for getting it were. First of all, then, I guess the main rule, if you like, is I do kind of have an era. I don't have any set rules because I don't really have any much knowledge of the railways. I just remember when I was a kid growing up through the 80s and 90s, I guess, and when I had train sets in that time, these were the kind of trains that I was used to and familiar with. The 80s, mainly BR Blue, and so that's what's influenced. And then maybe moving into the 90s, when I used to use the train a lot, kind of university time, going to see friends and people, spending a lot of time on the trains, I think that's influenced what I've bought as well. But that pretty much is the rule, and that's what I try and stick to as well as I can, and that's probably apparent by what's on the layout. And having been influenced by those trains, I started off really with the layout in the last loft, with mainly the old Hornby Ringfield 80s era trains. And I was happy trundling those around while I was getting used to everything again, because I hadn't really touched the train set since maybe 1989, something like that. And I was happy enough with these, and they're easily enough converted to DCC. I've got a DCC layout. The problem with them was they were fairly unreliable, and they often stalled, needed a push, didn't start very well, and you had to keep them really clean because of the lack of pickups and the fairly basic motors in them. And most of the time that was okay. If it stalled, I'd push it. But as I went towards automation, I had the layout drive in the trains, I started to need stuff that I could rely on more. So that's very much become a rule as well. I want something with a decent number of pickups, preferably all-wheel pickups, all-wheel drive, something that I can trust to start when the layout wants to start it, and be less prone to stalling. Just importantly, of course, there's cost. And looking at no train in particular, sometimes you just, this is one train from childhood that I remember always wanting on a train set, and I had the old Ringfield ones, but they never really worked very well. So every now and again you've got to bite the bullet and say, okay, I really want that one, and I'm prepared to pay what they're asking for it. But for the rest of the time, really, it's all about compromise. It's about finding something that applies to the rules, and this applies to rolling stock as well as to locos. That something that kind of falls within those rules of the right era, sort of wouldn't look out of place on this layout with the other trains, and is a reliable runner, and I can rely on it to in terms of coaching stock, not derail, and locos start and stop when they're supposed to and not stop when they're not supposed to. So the general approach really is just keep an eye out and see if there's anything that falls within those parameters that I can get for a price that I think is, I don't think there are any bargains anymore, but a price that's reasonable to me. And so on the same kind of approach as well, I just liked it and I wanted it, so I bought it. This is the first new runner since I've had the layout working. It's I think it's a class 144. It's FE rail. and again, it's just the right kind of, I remember this, you know, this livery, and I remember travelling on trains like this, and I think this one in particular has got, its directions are York and Leeds, which is very local to me. It's got lights. So I've got it, I think, from maybe from the model centre, and it cost me 216, which was the cheapest I could find it, which to me is still quite a lot of money for a train. And I think from the feel of it as well, I might be wrong, because I don't really know anything about model trains either, it feels a little bit on the cheap side. It's light, maybe maybe it's not all-wheel drive, maybe the motor's just in one end of it. I haven't taken it apart enough to see, and the coupling is an absolute nightmare. It took me ages to get it coupled, and I didn't think I was going to be able to get it coupled, to the point where I'm never ever going to uncouple it again. Wherever it goes, it's going to stay as a two-piece unit. That difficult coupling on it at least means that it only needs one decoder in it, so that all of the connections between the front car and the back car that are on that connector through the coupling mean that the lights, I think there are probably pickups in the back of it, there are in the back car, and also the control of lights on the rear is handled through those connections too. Next up is this then, a really quite old Bachmann class 47. It has kind of the basic requirements, I guess, that I have. It's all-wheel drive, all-wheel pickup, and it has front and rear lights. I'm sure it's not as detailed. I mean, I couldn't tell you the year, probably early mid-2000s, I don't know. It was advertised on eBay as new, and I interpret new when it's that old as someone's bought it and kept it in the box and never run it. And I can't see any evidence, having got it, that they were dishonest about that. The wheels are clean. It really needed a good run in. The box was immaculate. So I think this is effectively new to me. I can't remember how much it was. Probably, it was certainly under £100, maybe 80 or 90, something like that, which is something I'm happy to pay. It doesn't, I'm sure, I have the detail on it that a more modern one does, but then I don't have great eyesight anyway, so the naked eye, I'm never really going to see that detail, and plus I don't have any knowledge of what an actual class 47 should look like. So to me, these things are fine. I'm not the type to do high intensity full zoom running shots of them, so I don't really care that it might be missing the odd bit of detail that a modern one has, as long as it runs reliably and yeah, has I like the lights. Let's see if I can, in a one-handed fashion, get it moving then. Now, perhaps unsurprisingly, this one does seem to have a few issues. It's a beautifully smooth runner now that it's run in. Just the first issue I think it has is it rocks, and well, not in a good way. It seems to me to have way too much movement in the body here, and that's possibly affecting its weight transfer, and it seems to. It can occasionally, even though this is just a radius 4 equivalent curve that it's on here, when I first had it, it doesn't seem to be doing it so much now, but when I first had it, it would just, I don't know, it couldn't transfer its weight properly as it hit the curve, and this front wheel would come off and derail on this side. It's not doing it so much now, but I wonder if it's happening somewhere else, and that's a cause of another issue it has, which is these plastic bits that are so low to the track there. I guess they're okay when they're on the track like that, but on a set of points, if like curved points, for example, if the bogey's turned, that little bit of plastic right down there seems to be able to jam itself on the plastic guides that are inside the rails, and it instantly not only derails the thing but tips it up as well, maybe due to its weight transfer. So I've definitely got work to do still with this one. I guess ultimately it's pretty drastic, but if I have to, I can either try and bend these front bits of plastic here, or really, I guess in the end, if I have to, just snip them off. I won't miss them. Well, I've done a bit of work on its wheel spacing, which might have helped a little bit, but I do think it's that weight distribution on it that's causing the problem. What I also did when I put it back on the track was give it a real kind of push downwards. I think the bogies are just too loose and unstable, and it's unweighting them on corners, I think anyway. But certainly the wheels were close together as well, and needed a bit of spacing out. Now it's dragging around a rake of mainline coaches, which I also kind of gathered up because I've realised I'd sort of need a new rake of Mark 1 coaches. I think actually there are a couple of Lima ones in there, but the reason why I go for the Lima and mainline ones really is because you can usually get them for about £9 or £10 each, but also they don't have that silver a coating around the windows that the Hornby ones have. I don't know if that's true to life, but I think it looks a bit toy-like on the Hornby coaches. I don't know if I've got any left anymore, but I'll drag one out to try and demonstrate what I mean if I can find one. So ultimately then that's a locomotive for about £80 or £90, I think. I can't quite remember how much I paid for it, certainly not more than 100, and around 8 coaches I think for probably about 65 quid, so looking at maybe 150 for the whole train, which I think still seems to me like a lot of money, but probably isn't all that bad for something that meets the requirements. It's got lights, it's got smooth running, reliable running. I just need to sort out its structural issues. The coaches are kind of, they're okay. They're not the worst Mark 1 coaches out there, so it seems like it's going to work for me on this layout. I was aware though, and I have been aware since I started the first layout, that what I didn't have on any of the layouts was a freight train, so I've been working to put that right as well. And there'd been lots of reasons why I was reluctant to buy a freight train. The first one was I wanted kind of, I had sort of freight trains as a kid, the red Texaco trucks and a guard wagon and that kind of thing, but although I completely concede this is a toy train set, I wanted a certain level of not looking like toys. And I think growing up where I grew up, there was always a railway line nearby, and it was always freight trains. It was the northeast around Teesside, and I was much more familiar as a kid with actual railway lines of seeing freight trains much more than I saw passenger trains, and I guess I wanted to try and recreate that a little bit, so it had to have that uniformity, and again the reluctance had come around having the budget, I guess, because these I guess the ranges changed, so I didn't feel it was viable to just buy a couple when I had the budget, because I was always fearful that I might buy 6 and then the range stops and they've disappeared and I can't get any more. So I'd always been hanging around to wait for a point where I had the budget, where I could buy them all at once, but also they were a reasonable price, because wagons, I don't know, everything just seemed so expensive as well. So I'd sort of hung around waiting for a point where I felt like Again, no bargains, but I maybe wouldn't ever get the opportunity to buy them any cheaper. So I happened to see on someone's summer sale, I think it was the Model Centre again, I'm not in any way affiliated with anyone, it was just where I saw them and couldn't find them for a better price. So I think they were 33% off the sets of 3, and they had enough in stock, so I just decided there was a bit of birthday money involved as well. So I decided now was the time. So I bought, I think, 7 packs of 3 at 33% off, and I think really I wasn't going to get... I've been looking for a while, and I certainly haven't seen anything at that kind of price, so decided it was time to take the plunge. The Loco is new as well. That's again really quite aged Bachmann Class 37, but it was again advertised as new, probably bought by someone, kept in a box and never used. And again, I've got no reason to think that that's not the case. The Loco does run very reliably. I have to say it seems slow, but then I think these things probably were slow, mainly designed, I guess, for dragging lots of things slowly rather than a few things quickly. So that's running at about half speed, but actually that doesn't really seem that bad. I'm not sure I'm going to want all these things rattling around here any faster than that. It does mean that its low speed acceleration is very slow. You know, it absolutely crawls at say 5%, which can cause problems with automation. So I might have to kind of front load the speed a little bit, maybe so that it's at full whack by the time it's at 50%, which will probably make it run a little bit more reliably. I'm also going to have to do something with all of those wheel sets. At the minute, because there's been so much upheaval, there's no automation running at all on the layout. So I am actually quite enjoying just manually running trains around for a while. It seems a lot less stressful. Something I just forgot to mention when I was creased up in strange corners trying to film trains. The mainline coaches that I got hold of, all of them come with plastic wheels, which I mean isn't an issue for just running around. Actually, they run a bit more quietly than metal wheels, but it is an issue to someone like me who's going to end up again going back to the automation route. The Lima coaches have metal wheels, but all of the mainline ones have plastic ones. So there is going to be a bit of additional expense in getting suitable metal wheels so that I can put resistor wheel sets on them. That's it really for additions, at least. I think it has made a difference. I think it gets more interesting the more. I'm really not one for collecting lots and lots of trains, but a little bit of variety never goes amiss. I'm quite enjoying, especially having that freight train running around. That's very novel. I think it was in the last video that I mentioned or described the work I've been doing up here on replacing motors and that kind of thing. I've kind of made a decision, another decision up here. I've been reluctant. I've still got to do testing, and some of the servos can be a bit unreliable. And I've learned a few lessons about using servos with ESP32 boards, which will either have been mentioned before this or will be after. And I was reluctant really to commit, because what I really need to do now is get these boards fastened down and start growing the track, laying track, so that I can actually have an upper deck, because it was probably noticeable from all the running shots that with just this lower deck mostly covered up now, I don't actually see the trains very much. So it'd be nice to have trains running round and what will ultimately be a scenic layer one way or another. But I've been a bit reluctant to start it, because I'm reluctant to fasten this board down, fasten all the track down and move on, because I don't trust the servos. And the reason why it's an issue here is this board is higher and it's above. It's really the only part of the upper deck that will be almost directly above other trains, but because it's higher and it's right at the back, if I pull out a bit, it's right at the back of those boards and then go underneath, it's kind of all the way back there. There's just a motor mount visible there, and it's really quite a long way back, and there's no backrest there, and I haven't got the stomach muscle to be all the way back there. So I think what I've decided now is I'm going to commit. I've got no reason to believe it's not working at the minute, so I'm going to commit. And what I'm going to do, if I need to start changing motors and mounts and everything up there again, I'm not going to pull that board out. I'm going to extend these boards out here. I'm going to lay, I've still got a lot of these floorboards left and a few of the stilts. I'm going to start extending the floorboards out. These are meant to be shelves, but I'll strengthen this one if I need to, if whichever one, probably this one, because there's less wire to crawl under here. I'll fasten all that wire up and make it safe. But I'm going to start laying floorboards the other side of that so that I can shimmy through if I need to, and then I've got somewhere to sit further back, and then once I'm directly under all of the motors under there, they'll be easier to swap if I need to. And that just removes a lot of the fear factor, I think, of committing to having this where it is and starting to connect it to other track and fasten everything down. Apart from that, there are still technical issues down in this corner. I've got through most of them to the point where, as it's hopefully obvious, I can run trains again now, which is a big step forward. There are still issues down here. I'm still working through them, and there've been a lot as well. And I've documented them as I've gone through and tried to document what I've tried to do to go about resolving them. But I think maybe I'll just leave this video as lots of gratuitous train running and do another one about what's been going on down here.